All right. Welcome back to another episode of the ERG Movement Podcast. My name's Maceo, and I go by the ERG Homegirl on LinkedIn because I am all things employer resource groups, and I am the founder and CEO of the ERG Movement. But this podcast episode is not about me. We love to welcome amazing people on the podcast, and today is no different. We have Stephanie here with us. You know what? Actually, Stephanie, you give us an intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone out there. I am Stephanie Anderson. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I work for a company called Slalom. We are a business and transformation focused consulting firm, and I more specifically work with our ERGs and the women's ERG here. Have been in that role for probably about 5 years now, and I'm very excited to continue this conversation and talk all things ERGs.
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of talking to ERG leaders. And even for 5 years, I'm sure that you've had a lot of experiences within the space. So excited to hear more. A question I love to kick off with is just in general, what brought you to like your first ERG? What made you want to join?
Yeah, great question. So thinking back, I've been at my company for a little under 10 years right now. And just thinking back to when I first started, when I was hired there, I decided to just say yes to everything as much as I could for the first year so that I could get to know people. And that was really where I started getting engaged with our ERGs. The Slalom Women ERG was the very first one, Slalom. And at the time, it was really small and really local, but then it started to grow and get a lot bigger and expand to some of our other markets. And then I actually helped create the global model. So that's in a nutshell the evolution of why I started getting engaged there and how it's grown.
Amazing. Now, with that, have you had any like professional development that's come about by you being part of the ERGs?
For sure. I've taken a lot of courses that are really focused on how to create impactful ERGs through a lot of different methods, some online, some in person. I've gotten to go to some conferences around women in business and ways that we can start to grow and really create a movement inside of women focused ERGs. So it's been really phenomenal. And then on the other side, I've fortunately gotten to help consult and build on how we work with our ERG leaders to help them become more successful in their careers and grow inside of what we have at Solemn.
Okay. Now to really dive into that, I'm curious, what have been, if you could say maybe three takeaways or three things that you've been able to really push forward around helping ERG leaders grow in their careers based on them being an ERG leader? What would those three things?
Gosh, I'm gonna have to narrow it down because there are definitely more than three.
We can
Um,
go five
yeah,
even if better.
awesome. I definitely would say the first one is just it exposes you to such a fantastic community, not only with your fellow ERG leaders, but also to the leadership within your organization, within your company. I'm a huge proponent of the executive sponsor model for ERGs. And so I think that exposes you to whether it's actual executives, VPs, whomever, that puts someone in your corner that really does have exposure to your organization, can be a sponsor for you personally, and then obviously be a sponsor for your ERG. So I think that's one of the biggest ways that we've done that. The second one I would say is actually connecting it to our performance review process. So understanding what ERG leaders do and then understanding what the performance review process is and finding out where those two things overlap. And then working with the ERG leaders managers to help them understand what the contributions are, how that is connected to the performance review process, since the manager is usually responsible for that, and then how they can use it as part of their growth or their promotion plan. And I found that be extremely successful and really a productive way to help ERG leaders and those who participate in ERGs grow within the organizations that they're in. And then finally, I think, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of networking, external networking, and professional development opportunities for ERG leaders. So like I said, how to run an impactful ERG, how to gain membership buy-in and leader buy-in. And all of those skills come into your day-to-day, whether you're consulting, whether you're working in a specific industry, those skill sets that you gain as an ERG leader, organizing people, creating a budget, building exciting things, all of that can then obviously and easily translate into your actual job, your 40 hours a week, or your day-to-day, or whatever that looks like for you. So those are really the three things that I think help drive successful ERGs and then create really strong and impactful leader within those ERGs.
I love that. Okay. Now, that being said, you also mentioned that members can benefit from ERGs, which I'm sure people watching this podcast are familiar with. But curious, what are some member kind of professional development things that you've leaned into that you've found impactful?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest one, and it's probably universal, but in my experience, we focus on women and specifically women of color within our organizations, are the mentorship, the sponsorship, and the coaching opportunities that ERGs can help facilitate. And whether you're creating one on your own, whether you're working with a third party organization to help build that up, I think the mentorship opportunities that an ERG can start to facilitate and organize and then put out to their members is really essential. And then I'm also a huge proponent of sponsorship, and I see mentorship and sponsorship very differently. But really, to succeed in professional development, you have to have that person in your corner, whatever they look like, however they relate to you, but is someone who's a little bit higher than you title wise. And having that person in your corner to be your sponsor, to help be your, and I look at it as your megaphone inside of the organization to really help build you up and show to other leaders what you can do is still essential. And so if ERGs can organize that or facilitate it, or like I said, partner with an organization that already does that, bring them in, that is just incredibly essential to professional development for all members.
Got you. And do you all have some sort of mentorship component within your ERG?
We do. And if you need to edit this out or change it, but we partner with the mentor method inside of Slalom to help build up not just mentorship, but some additional opportunities. And right now we focus on our women of color, and that creates an intersectional opportunity. So not just with our women's ERG, but with our Black communities, Asian, Latina, LGBT, any of those, we're able to partner with them as well and create some intersectional opportunities to drive a lot of that engagement.
Got you. Okay. So I really want to hear from you. What are some recommendations or even just considerations when it comes to a mentorship program? Because I hear a lot of companies, they want it. A lot of ERG leaders are like, this sounds great, but I don't even know where to start. Hear a recommendation.
Yeah, and that actually is, I think, the key to it is leaders we want to be mentored, we want to be coaches as sponsors, but we don't know where to start. We don't know what to say. We might not have the same shared experiences, especially when you're looking at that most companies still have very dominantly white and male leadership. It's very hard to find someone who has very similar lived experiences to say a Black woman or a Black queer woman who wants to start to go up that ladder and get promoted. So what we do is we actually focus on the mentor, and we make sure that the mentee is getting what they need and all of that. But really, in terms of the structure, we focus on the mentor. And I think that's a little bit different than what a lot of people do, because the mentor is the person who is providing the advice, who's creating that safe space to that person, and who needs to understand their own methods, their own biases, and how they can be a better mentor for that mentee. So with that, we do a lot more focus and training at the start for them. We still absolutely have time with the mentees where we check in, we make sure that they're doing well and that they're able to really thrive in that space. But we also make sure that the mentor has what they need to create a successful program for the mentee. And so that's a lot of what we follow at Slalom, and make sure that there's a really holistic sort of environment that's firing on all cylinders.
I love that. Now, also, when it comes to professional development events and things like that, what have been some of your favorites that you've seen,
Oh gosh,
in numbers?
great question. So we do a couple of events throughout the year. One is we do have in the past, and I think we've been doing this since about probably 2020, because the whole goal was driving connection. But we have done a week-long summit. It's absolutely virtual because Slalom is a global company. And in 2020, 2021, we really felt like we were missing that connection piece, obviously. And so we decided to do a week-long summit. We pick a theme every year that really focuses on how we grow our women and then how our women help grow our business. I am a huge proponent of ERG, looking at that business resource group model, especially when you're in something like consulting, which is very people focused. But this event is a week long, probably 2 to 3 sort of event invitations per day in lots of different time zones because we span the globe. But we really focus on things where people are going to learn, where they're going to grow, where they're going to connect with each other. And then obviously going back to that professional development, how it makes them better at their job. And so whether that's through making sure that you have that psychologically safe space so that people can be more productive and more innovative in their jobs, or whether it's making connections throughout the organization that they might not have had before. But that is definitely one of the favorite things that I've done. We usually do it every fall, so we're starting to think through the one for this year. But it's just an amazing thing where people can come together in that virtual format and really support each other.
I'm obsessed with that, and actually a company I'm working with now is looking to do the same thing. So again, even with the tips, I'm curious because I think they're centering it around Women's Equality Day, and they're trying to do a week-long set of, like, activations. Yeah, has there been any feel free to shout out any speakers, any just anything that's made the process easier or any
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing that's made the process easier for us is definitely partnering with our marketing team, our procurement team to make sure that the process is really smooth, to get some really cool branding out of it and things like that. And then I think what I would say is a really cool speaker that we've had is Priya Parker, who have wrote oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it's called The Art of Gathering. And it's really about making your meeting reasoning, even if you're having a dinner party, whatever that looks like, giving it purpose. And so for us, as in I think the virtual corporate world, it was really focused on, do you need this meeting? If you have this meeting, it needs to have a purpose, it needs to be impactful, and really starting to cultivate that type of thinking. But it can very much expand outside of the corporate environment into you're going to coffee with a friend. Like, how do you make sure that you both derive value from that conversation and that it's really impactful for you both? So I think that was one of the really cool ones. I believe that we had maybe 2 years ago, but I just really enjoyed that one because it was very transcendent of both business and personal life, as well as driving professional development and driving personal development as well.
Yeah, I wish I had all my books handy, but I'm looking
Right.
at a book right there.
Love it.
So, yes, I am a fan. Okay, and even then, when it comes to these different events that we do,
Mhm.
right now, engagement is a major pain point for
Absolutely.
ERGs. Literally within the ERG champs community, as people join, they're able to vote on their pain points, and
Mhm.
engagement is the number one pain point. That being said, what have you all done to really drive member engagement within your ERG?
Great idea, or great question, and idea as well to drive and understand what pain points are. So I think for us, there are a couple of different methods that we decided to take. Absolutely knowing that there is a high level of burnout right now, I think across the globe, there are a lot of people who, and this might be a post 2020 or post COVID or lockdown sort of issue, but I think people are really focus on one thing at a time. And once they are asked to get out of that one thing, whether it's their job or their family, all understandable, they don't want to anymore. And so we are seeing some lower engagement numbers and things like that. I think that's pretty standard to what a lot of other people are seeing. So what we do try and do is first, and I think it's probably one of the easiest ones and the one that's right in your face, is we very much try to schedule our events inside of times that we know people are going to be engaged or available. And we look at that across the globe because we span from Tokyo to Australia to Germany, London, on and all the way through North America. So we're looking at just about every time zone available. So we do schedule things, and like I said, it's in the East Coast. So we schedule things maybe early in the day for our European market, later in the day if we're looking at something that's going to be over in the APAC area. And if we don't have the opportunity to do something twice, then we'll record it and we'll have kind of a listening session or something like that where we show it again at a different time zone that's more convenient for some other people. So that's one way that we've really found it's easy to drive engagement. And we have sort of committee leads or sub leads for ERG in a lot of these different areas. So we'll have maybe somebody from our Dublin office lead something, and then somebody from our Melbourne office lead something. And so then you can see both of those time zones or hit both of those expanded time zone areas and drive some engagement there. And then people don't feel quite like they're left out. Slalom is a United States founded and headquartered company. So we do try and strive to make sure that our members don't feel like they are consistently having to adhere to Pacific Coast time zones or something like that. So that's one of the first ones that we do. And then secondly, we want to make sure, and I think this one's also really simple, that we are staying on top of the trend. For the women's ERG specifically, we are starting to look at an event that we could possibly do before the end of the year, where we talk about the women's health crisis and how there are impacts both in the United States and outside of the United States to the way women's health is being treated right now. And then we talk through what we can do as consultants, as mothers, as not mothers, or anything else. We talk through what we can do to help that. So I think that one's coming up soon. And so we do try and stay on top of things like that and make sure that we're speaking and driving the engagement that people want to see to the topics. So those are two really easy ones, but ones that we've seen be fairly effective.
Yeah. Big on staying on top of trends. I think that sometimes we can just I don't know. I don't know what it is, but sometimes I've seen programming just be recycled over and we don't
Right.
actually take away from what's happening in the current world. So I do love that. Now, that being said, even when it comes to member events that connect members or people get to talk to each other, any favorites there that you all do?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. One model that we do with all of our ERGs, I think we have probably about between 40 and 50 offices right now, is we do have members on the ground who take lead and are seen as leads for their office or their market. And they actually do facilitate a good number of connections, whether that's a networking event, whether it's a happy hour, whether it's something more professional development minded for those in their office. And those are fortunately, because they are local, able to be in person. And then we bring everyone together, all of those leads, we bring them together about every other month or so to talk through what they're seeing that's successful, give them any specialized training that they would like or anything like that. So we do employ these sort of local and global model with our ERGs so that we can drive engagement at a more specific and localized level. And then people are able to build that community and start seeing people that they know when they come into the office, or maybe actually work on projects together with other people who are part of their local ERG model. And so that's one way that we've really found that's been extremely successful. And it's something that we do try and foster at the same time and really help grow and build.
Mm. Now, oh, I had a question that just went out of my oh, yeah. We're talking about engagement. So when it comes to engagement, not everything that we try is a winner. And that's also, I don't like to call them
Absolutely.
losses. I like to say learnings. So wins and learnings. Any learnings that you've had, things that may not have panned out or that you've been able to have to take away from uh
Yeah. I'm trying to think on that one for a little bit. I think definitely, yeah, I'll give one, I think that's a little bit more local. And like I said, I do think that people are just really, if you're going into the office, you might not want to stay super late. And so one thing that we have started doing, because I think, actually, let me back up. So before 2020, before lockdown and definitely the shift in working model, I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, I can stay for a happy hour till 7, or if there's going to be a leadership panel that 5 to 6:30 or something like that, people would be like, yeah, absolutely. We've tried that in, I would say, the past 2 years and have found that is not the case anymore. People are definitely leaving 4 or 5 o'clock on the dot to get home to their families and to do things that are bringing them happiness and joy, and there's never anything wrong with that. So what we have been starting to do is to actually shift and think through, okay, could we actually do this during lunch or maybe first thing in the morning or things like that? And we've seen that shift a little bit of our engagement as well. We definitely went through some where I think out of a local office of maybe 600, we had 15 people attend. And so realizing that definitely the way of working and people's commitment levels have changed, we went through several fails until I think we started to really shift and think through what it looked like and how we want to adjust to it.
being willing to pivot. It helps so much with an ERG and not
Exactly.
feeling like we have to do it like this, from what I've seen. Any intersectional programming that you all have worked with other ERGs to put on that you
Yes, especially I think especially if you look at, for example, our women healthcare crisis that we're talking about, that I think very much transcends not only just women, but if you're looking especially at the LGBTQ community as well. And then if you look even closer at the women's health crisis, there are very different issues that are different women are dealing with from different backgrounds. We know that for anything that we're talking about, it is probably much worse, especially for our Latina and our Black women. And so we're really trying to drive those conversations as well, make sure that there is the intersection understanding that, yes, some of these are universal. We acknowledge that there are different challenges, different things that are happening to different communities. And so we really want to make sure that we are just talking through that. And then I think on the flip side, we also want to talk through the ways that it's impacting our mental health. It's impacting those who might be neurodiverse. And at Slalom, we do have an ERG that does have membership that is neurodiverse, has mental health struggles or developmental disabilities. And so we work with them as well to not just talk through, okay, here are the things that are happening, but also what is the effect of that and how that's going to play out. So we do try and hopefully make it as intersectional as possible. I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, for about a year, I had a philosophy that we were not allowed to do an event unless there was another ERG engaged to really promote that intersectionality. And so hopefully that culture is, I think, sticking a little bit, where we're just trying to think through what can we do to make this as broad as possible and to reach higher audiences. And then again, I think that goes back to the engagement, where people are starting to see, hey, maybe this is not just a women's issue, or for lack of a better word, a white women's issue or something like that. And that, I think, having that dual or that multiple ERG engagement can help drive engagement too.
Definitely, and lessen the workload on you as an ERG leader as
Yes,
well when
as
you
well.
share it.
Yes.
All right, I know we're coming up on time, so just a couple of quick questions. One around budget and how you all have been able to creatively like use budget to drive member engagement.
Absolutely. So I think we are very intentional with our budget. Most of our budgets in the past have definitely gone to conferences, different things like that. And so I think we are able to drive a little bit of member engagement through that, especially for people who are interested in things like Society of Women in Business, Grace Hopper, all of those things. I think that's been a great driver of showing support that we care about what our people care about. And then on the flip side of that, we again have gone back to any budget that we use. We do want to make sure that what people are passionate about, trends, not necessarily like global political trends, but trends within our membership and what they want to do. So I think if using Priya as an example, we were able to show that we're having probably about 2 years ago, I think is when she came on, but we were at a point where we were like, okay, people are fatigued from meetings. You probably have 40, 50 virtual meetings on your calendar a day. So you're sitting in front of the computer, or sorry, not a day, a week, but you're sitting in front of the computer, you're tired of it. And so bringing in Priya to talk about how you make these impactful, you make them worth people's time, I think was really a shift for us, where we were able to say, okay, now we can maybe reduce some of this meeting time because we might not need it or it might not be valuable. But again, not just that you're reducing the time, but when you are in front of your computer, that it's really impactful for you. So that's one way I think that we drive in our budget as well, is really just thinking through what do our people need right now? What do they want to hear? And then how we can leverage that.
I love it. Okay. Now, the question I always love to close with,
Mhm.
really with this being the ERG Movement podcast, it's about doing things better within the ERG space. Is there any, it could be either a trend that you're like, oh, I think this is something we could do differently or better, or even just something that you maybe experience as an ERG leader where you're like, if this was different, this would definitely drive progress in the ERG
Oh
space.
gosh, yeah. I'm not going to call anybody out, and I am in the fortunate place of I've also got to work with clients, not specifically on ERGs, but really around DEI strategy and things like that. And leadership buy-in, it's just such a huge one, because I think that if people see that it is something that's important to leadership, and I'm talking CEOs, presidents, that they are actively engaged in it and they're walking the walk, I just see that, for lack of a better word, that trickle down into just thriving ERG cultures and thriving DEI cultures. And then I think that relates, especially as it comes to ERGs, executive sponsors, and then, like I was saying before, managers who are managing ERG leaders. I've seen that go really poorly, but I've also seen it go really well, where you see something that's important to the leader of the company, and then it becomes important to those who work there. There are a lot of different ways that I've worked to gain that. I think a lot of it is that there are business cases for ERGs, for thriving DEI culture that help people be more productive, more innovative, and then obviously they stay at those companies for a long time versus leaving, which costs so much money. So I think that's really when I would say the biggest thing that I would see in the future, if I could get a magic wand out, would be to just have DEI and ERG buy-in from the topmost levels to help people really succeed.
Yep. I've seen this a lot of ERGs at different companies with ERGs. So I
Mhm.
definitely co-sign. Leadership support, it's a game changer for the ERGs. Well,
Absolutely.
definitely want to thank you for joining, Stephanie. Any closing words that you have for the people to hear?
Not at all. Been wonderful. Thank you. If you have any questions, like find me on LinkedIn. I am always more than happy to have a quick chat, share battle stories, talk through ideas, anything like that. It's one of my passion areas. I've definitely done it with random people before in the past where we talk for 30 minutes and then stay connected. So if you find me on LinkedIn, absolutely reach out. I'd love to meet and talk more.
I love that. And Stephanie is a member of the ERG Champs community, putting that out
Absolutely.
there. So feel free to connect. Thank you again so much for joining us, Stephanie, and we will
Thank
catch
you.
you all on the next one.
All right. Hope everyone has a great day.